He's been called the Prince of Darkness, the Blizzard of Oz, and the Godfather of Heavy Metal. Is his new nickname the Comeback Kid? In this episode, we're talking about Ozzy Osbourne and his star-studded album, Patient Number 9. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. First and foremost, if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment. That would be great. We're catering to the YouTube crowd now.
Yes, we are.
We have to embrace the video.
We don't have a choice, right?
Kicking and screaming, I'm pulling Eric into the video age.
Yeah. He just start putting stuff on YouTube, and I was like, well, he didn't even ask me if that was cool, but that's all right.
I bought an 80-inch TV just so I could look at Eric's face.
He's
bigger than mine, like huge
on YouTube. So
he's like the Wizard of Oz. He's like Oz in my room. His face.
There you go. No, but they all came out fine.
Whippersnapper.
It's nice that you're picking the best of the bunch to put on.
You're saying we have crappy episodes that we should not show?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't seen a bad one yet, but
good. All right. Well, that bodes well then. Either Andy, you could tell us this. Maybe either my selections are really good, or we have no bad episodes.
Yes.
What do you think? Both? Yes to both.
Yeah.
Good answer.
and that, my friends, is our special guest Andrew Cremines making his triumphant return. We haven't had him in a while, but he's been busy. That's why. He's been He's been rocking and rolling and just doing a lot of great artistic work. You can find him on Andrew Cremines Art on Instagram. So go ahead, as always, give him a follow. He's doing a lot of great work with a lot of great established artists and artists that are on the rise and that are garnering a loyal following. Shall we leave it at that, or do you want to say?
Oh, sure. The last one I did was for a band called Ghost that I love. They're one of my favorite bands in the last 10 years. I don't know very many people that agree with me at all, but I like them a lot. And but I actually, we saw them in concert. I did a poster for the concert here in Tampa at the Yingling Center at USF, and it was sold out. It was completely packed. They have the they take a page from Kiss. You've got the masquerade, you've got the showmanship, you've got
the theatrics.
The pyro, so people were showing up in the makeup and stuff, dressed like the singer and stuff. So it's, it just feels, and then there was, it's just great. Good stuff.
If you go dressed as some of the backing members, though, you won't be able to see because they wear like full silver masks that you can't actually see anything out of. So you might miss the show. You might hear it, but
something out of Eyes Wide Shut, actually. They're wearing those like robes and it's very neat, metal masks and very odd. But I'd love to experience one of their shows actually.
Yeah. And speaking of selling out, Andrew did he sold a run of these posters for Ghost that they're foil posters, and he signed them. Literally sold out in a matter of like less than 10 seconds. So. Well done on that, Andrew. Congratulations. Well, the poster is just another gorgeous piece of art. Just looking at it is just fun. It's just like great to just kind of sit there and stare. Honestly. It's just really great.
Continue your thought, of course. But
tell me more about me.
The texturing in this one is insane. I appreciate it. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah. And you could see that on Andrew Cremines Art on Instagram. By all means, go check it out. Not to get too far into Ghost land, but somewhat related. We're talking about Ozzy Osbourne.
Mm-hmm.
And he just, as of the release of this episode, his latest album, Patient Number 9, has just come out. So this is fresh, hot off the presses. We've only done this once before with our Lord Huron episode for Long Lost, so I thought it would be fun to get outside of a little bit of our comfort zones, although it's not too far, and do this. So we've got some stats, but we don't have a lot of stats because we don't have the sales stuff that we like to go to. But anyway, released September 9th of 2022, produced by Andrew Watt, who produced his previous album, which is kind of important. There's a relationship there that's developing. There were 3 singles released from this album: Patient Number 9, Degradation Rules, and Nothing Feels Right. And this is his lucky 13th solo album. He's had more solo output than he had with Black Sabbath, although he eclipsed that a few albums ago. Let's get into, so I kind of, when I go through, we all go on YouTube and you sometimes go down the rabbit hole, and on my front page was like this link for a video, Ozzy Osbourne featuring Jeff Beck for the song Patient Number 9. I'm like, what? Like Jeff Beck and Ozzy. I'm like, this is very strange. Let me go check out the video, which was done by Todd McFarlane, had done all the artwork for the videos, an animated video, which is kind of neat as well. And I sent the link to Eric. I'm like, what do you make of this? Like, this is just a strange pairing, but I really like the song. It's got a nice hook to it. Ozzy is in good voice. Andy, what did you think of the lead singer? What did you think of Patient Number 9?
The drummer from Red Hot Chili Peppers helped write that song too. Right. When you guys asked me if I wanted to be on this to review the new Ozzy album, I was like, why are they doing an Ozzy album? And then I started reading more about it and like, oh, Eric Clapton's on it, Jeff Beck's on it. This makes a lot more sense.
I had no idea that these guys weren't even on it when we decided to do it. Yeah.
Oh, great.
No.
Yeah. So I before we jump into anything, let me just say that you guys put me through the ringer this week because I am like, I've listened to Ozzy more than any other artist in my life, like way beyond Metallica, way beyond, but the very first concert I was on last time talking about Metallica, we were going to go see Ozzy when we saw them first. Mm-hmm. So Ozzy is like my family, like my family all loves him and stuff. And I put this album on and I was so frustrated because I was working while I was listening to it, and I kind of text Eric, and I was like, but I'll get into that more in a little bit. But it was I heard Patient Number 9, and I was like on the radio, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, it's got to, it'll grow on me eventually, I think. Mm-hmm. But just listening to this album going into it, I've become very, very allergic in my old age to people's hot takes on things, and like especially when they don't hate when they hate something. I mean, everybody on the internet hates something, and I didn't want to come on here and just talk about how everything that was old is better and that sort of stuff. And so I was like trying so hard to be like, I'm not going to have a hot take on this. I'm not, so. This has been an exercise for me. So we'll talk about that.
I think Eric, this was an interesting exercise for us, right? Because Andy has his feet firmly planted in that genre, so he's going to have a totally different perspective. He has a lived in perspective on this, based on what he said. And he's our resident metal expert. So for us, it's not like I don't listen to metal. Right. I don't always listen to metal, but I certainly enjoy it and accept it and have no problem with it and have no problem with Ozzy. But yeah, it's not our forte, but it was something that was, when I heard the single, it really intrigued me. It just intrigued me that he was going in this direction, that he was looking to collaborate with artists that have no business being on an Ozzy album. So, and then Eric and I were talking about it last week. And I pulled up the song list, and I said, we didn't know. I said to Eric, I said, Clapton is on this album. Yeah. He's like, what?
I know.
Yeah.
And then there was a song called God Only Knows at the end. And I said, this better not be the Beach Boys.
Right.
Like I was like, okay, now what? I started thinking like, what's happening here? Right, Eric?
Then you quoted one of the lines from the song, which was, it's better to burn out than to fade. I said, that's not the Brian Wilson song.
Yeah, it's better to burn in hell than it was something weird. I'm like, that's
burn in hell and to fade away or whatever.
I said, we're clear on this.
That's not the Beach Boys, right there.
Yeah, we're clear of that. We're not the Beach Boys territory.
I guess we don't have to worry about them guesting on the record.
Yeah, or Ozzy being totally senile. So, which we'll talk about as well. So let's do a little brief history, and Andy will kind of fill in. We'll do the broad strokes here, and Andy will kind of fill in some of this. But we're just going to pick up Ozzy. We all know he got fired or left Black Sabbath and decided to strike out on his own. There is an ELO connection coming up, hot and heavy.
Goodness.
And it is a direct connection. So where this is not by threads. This is like direct. But anyway, his intent was to form the band was supposed to be called Blizzard of Oz, if I'm not mistaken. It ended up being the first album ended up being called that. With Randy Rhoads, what was his that was the connection. Randy Rhoads was his muse. You know, that was going to be the guy that was really going to kind of solidify and create the foundation for Ozzy's career. Is that a fair assessment, Andy?
Absolutely. He was a classically good trained guitarist. So he was bringing classical music into metal, you know, so you listen to songs like Diary of a Madman and stuff. It's like it's a classical piece of music, you know, and from what I understand as well, Rudy Sarzo is the bass player on touring and on a lot of the albums and stuff. And I've watched a lot of interviews with him because I love him. He's just a credible guy. And he was talking about very shortly before Randy was killed in the plane crash, he had talked about getting out of heavy metal. So I don't know if Ozzy would have pulled him back in or whatever, but it was almost like it was too pure to last, you know? So I don't know if it would have kept going, but he's one of the most amazing guitar players ever.
Yeah, I mean, those early reviews of that album were just talking about Randy Rhoads and the amazing stuff he was doing. And this, you know, Ozzy discovered this guy, right? And kind of brought him up and put him front and center in his band. And that he was going to be the centerpiece. And then in 1982, he would die in a plane crash, you know, and that would kind of really, I mean, he really wasn't well known, but everybody remembered when he died. It was like, oh, Randy Rhoads died. I certainly wasn't an Ozzy fan back then. I didn't really know anything, but I remember everybody taught Randy Rhoads.
You didn't need Ozzy. To be though. You didn't need to be a fan to be aware of this guy. I mean, he was on the scene. He was just one of, you know, like a lot of the greats. The tragedies befell them. Whatever the curse is, whatever they had, magic that they had, they're just not long for this earth. They just don't belong here somehow. I don't know what
he still talks about Randy Rhoads, Ozzy in interviews. So there would be a couple of a little revolving door of guitarists, and then Jake E. Lee would step in until about 87, right? And then enter Zakk Wylde, who kind of has become the anchor on and off throughout. He would leave in 95. He would join Guns N' Roses temporarily, and then he most recently joined Pantera after Dimebag Darrell passed away as well. So
he has a band called Black Label Society as well.
Yep. That's his own label stuff. He does that. And this guy's a monster. I'm like, I remember, like, you know, Jake E. Lee. I'm like, oh, back then he was like the hairband guy with no shirt. Now he looks like Thor.
Yeah, if you watch when the No More Tears album was when he kind of came on the scene, and if you watch the videos of No More Tears, he's got bell bottoms, no shirt on, like basically like heavy metal pinup that any metal girl would have on their wall or guy, and I didn't see him for a couple of years, and then he started like making videos of Black Label Society, and it's like, what did you eat him? Like, what happened? I mean, his arms are that big around.
It looks like he ate Rob Zombie.
Yeah.
like he just had, like, he's this brawny, like it almost looks like he's like manhandling the guitar now. He's like so big and just, you know, just this big, like, so what a change in his his look and everything. But and then after that, you know, Ozzy would kind of, in 2002, enter the social consciousness with a show called The Osbournes on MTV. One of those, you know, reality shows. Turned Ozzy Osbourne into Ozzy Nelson. Literally, people got a glimpse at the family. You know, I think it's a blessing and a curse because it brought the Osbournes, made them family friendly. He was, you know, in the 80s, he was a Satanist. He was sued for, you know, causing the suicide. You know, a fan killed himself, and there was a song "Suicide Solution." He was sued for that. Now all of a sudden, he's the most family friendly guy. He's on lunchboxes, and it's a comedy show. Like Sharon, you know, this whole thing. He totally had a pivot in his image, not necessarily his music, but in his image, right, Andy?
I right around that time, I was thinking about, I actually posted something on social media back then about, like, when I was a kid, I was thinking about, like, how cool the future of metal was going to be. And then, like, around that time, 2003, 4, 5, it was Bret Michaels' Rock of Love, Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, Ozzy, the Osbournes, like all of my favorite metal guys were now like reality show, like, you know.
I forgot about Gene Simmons. That's right. Oh my God, he was awful in that
Shannon
show.
Tweed.
He was just absolutely awful in that show. But and it highlighted his family. most notably Sharon, his wife Sharon, who her maiden name is Sharon Arden. Her father is Don Arden, notoriously brutal, ham-fisted music manager who managed Sabbath for a while, but he also managed a little group from the 60s called The Move, and also managed a group from the 70s called Electric Light Orchestra. But he was known for his brutal tactics, scamming people out of money. He formed Jet Records, the label that ELO was on as well. He formed that. And Sharon would kind of disavow her father and his techniques, but in all honesty, she didn't fall too far from the tree with some of her treatment.
Yeah, she's a formidable presence herself.
Formidable presence. And some of the people that worked on those early Ozzy records, she kind of, and Andy can kind of fill that in about songwriting credits. There was a lot of dispute, like sign this or you're not going to be on the album, sign away the credits, I'm
sorry, I can't remember the name of the original guitar player on the album Bark at the Moon, but he wrote like the original riff of Bark at the Moon, one like really famous song back then. Yeah. And there was all kinds of issues with copyright and like she just sweeps people under the rug. She's very brutal. I mean, she wouldn't even let Bill Ward play with Black Sabbath after a while. It's like Bill Ward, right, the drummer.
Yeah.
Like
you tell us
they reunited. I'm losing my mind. So it fits right in with this album. So Bill Ward, she wouldn't let him back on the reunion tour or whatever. So it's like she's just cutting. She's very brutal.
Yeah, and then in 2002 they were remastering and re-releasing his early work, and the original bass player and guitarist on that album, or the drummer and bass player, had some lawsuits. So she just went in and she grabbed Robert Trujillo, who was not in Metallica yet, I don't think, in 2002, and a drummer, and re-recorded the drum and bass tracks and put them over the re-release, which caused a minor kerfuffle with the fans as well, because it didn't say it on the label, like, hey, includes newly recorded or whatever. There was such a dust up, and Ozzy later on said, I wasn't aware and I didn't want that. And then in subsequent re-releases, they removed that, and it was the original.
It's funny because Robert Trujillo played with Ozzy, and that's how he kind of got in with Metallica. And then as soon as Rob joined Metallica, Jason Newsted started playing for Ozzy.
See that? So swapping them out.
That's crazy.
One in and one out. So that, and then in 2020, Ozzy would release an album called Ordinary Man, which was his first album in 10 years, his first solo album in 10 years. And he starts partnering with Andrew Watt, who is a guitarist in his own right and a musician. And I think, I think he's found somebody that can kind of help, has the connections or has the understanding of Ozzy and can kind of help guide his career in these later years, because 10 years without a solo album is a long time, and things change, but Ozzy's never going to change, I don't think. Yeah. What do you think, Andy?
He is a singular human. Like, there has never been an Ozzy and there will never be an Ozzy. There will be oftentimes imitated, but you will never get his voice, his personality, his story. Like I tell people all the time, he took enough drugs to kill a small elephant every single day, and I'm going to die of gluten exposure. It's just like he just won the genetic lottery, I guess, for in that regard. But he's just there's only going to be one Ozzy. It's going to be a tremendous loss when he's gone, but hopefully not too soon. But
Speaking of genetics, there was somebody that was doing a talk, and I think Ozzy was there or involved. And the scientist actually wanted to sequence his genome because they wanted to see how this man could sustain the damage that he did to his body with all the drugs. And they actually wanted to see if there was something particular about him. Yeah. Because he abused, you can't even say abused is using the word too lightly for what he did to his body between the alcohol, the drugs, and the relapses and everything. And he's self-admitted, he's aware. He said he should have been dead 5 times over. Yeah. Just with the way he just really abused himself and got to the point where he thought this was it. So I may as well just go over. I may as well just go for it, because he was in such a low place, after Sabbath, that he figured, let me just go out. I'll go out this way. And his body said, no, we're not we're certainly not done
with you yet. Right.
He would black out and do crazy things. Obviously, I mean, everybody knows about him peeing on the Alamo and stuff. But I don't know if you heard the story about the time he tried to kill Sharon, and they officially broke up for a while or whatever. But he went on a bender or something like that, and then woke up in the jail. And the guard was walking back and forth. He's like, "Why am I in here? What do I, whatever?" And he's like, "Well, you're under arrest for attempted murder of your wife." And he's like, "What?" So Sharon told the story that he was kind of pacing around he was on all the drugs and he was pacing around the room, and finally just looked up at her very calmly, looked her in the eye very calmly and said, "We've decided you should die."
Wow.
Ooh, just put his hands around her neck and tried to choke her to death. And I don't know how it didn't happen, but he was gone. He was out, so I think that was the first time he went into recovery.
They made a reality show.
Yeah.
Talking about gluten and all the, the trappings of a normal life.
The couple of dogs and he almost seemed like a participant in his own life. He's such a soft-spoken guy too. The antithesis of his presence on stage. And he says, something comes over him, something takes over. Because when he's in interviews, he's even older interviews, not even the stuff now when he's a little bit more debilitated, but just as calm as he could be. Regular guy doesn't do things for shock value unless he's on stage, really. Unless he's in the quote unquote Ozzy character. Very well spoken, actually. He sounds like he's out of it half the time, but that's more his manner of speaking at this point than it is his cognitive, any lack of cognitive abilities. He just kind of. He seems like he's out of it, but he's really not. He's really, he's able to tour. He's still touring. He's still creating and still singing on these albums. So there's got, it doesn't seem like for all the recent health stuff he's had, it doesn't seem like they're propping him up. He's able to deliver some solid vocals.
Pre-internet, of course, in the 80s. I mean, he was also the target very much so of like, I heard all the stories, like, Ozzy last night, had everybody spit in a bucket and he drank it, or he brought puppies, brought puppies and threw them in the audience, and he wouldn't go on stage until they were dead, or all, like there was all these just crazy things, and he didn't need a publicist. It was just people just ran with it, and he the worst I've seen him probably 7 or 8 times, and the worst thing I've ever seen him do is throw buckets of beer in the audience. Like he would like, I saw him reunite with Black Sabbath around 2003 or 4 when he was on the Osbournes, and he was doing the little grandpa shuffle. He was on all kinds of drugs on that show. But I mean, like prescription medication on top of stuff because of all his health issues. So he was just a mess anyway, but he'd do a little grandpa shuffle and grab like a bucket and throw it in the audience and then shuffle back over to the microphone. And he had like, the lyrics on the screen because for Crazy Train, so like,
wow.
I mean,
but he still goes out there and delivers, though, right? I mean, he's
absolutely.
The guy does his tour is called what? No More Tour number 2, like No More Tours 2.
Yeah.
So he, for a guy that's now been diagnosed with Parkinson's, he just doesn't, and he just performed at the NFL, one of the halftime shows. He doesn't seem to be slowing down, and that's what intrigued me about this album as we're going to get into it now is that. Here's a guy that should have been written off as many times as he should have OD'd and passed away, and comes out with an album and then starts collaborating with. Let me roll through the players on this album. That will kind of it'll help frame the conversation a little bit more. Of course, Zakk Wylde. All these guys are not all on the same tracks. They're pretty much guesting on different tracks. So you've got Zakk Wylde, you got Jeff Beck, you have Tony Iommi, you have Mike McCready from Pearl Jam. You have Eric Clapton. You have Josh Homme, who is probably did a lot of the backup guitar stuff because he's not credited on specific songs. He's from Queens of the Stone Age. You've got Dave Navarro, and that's your guitar lineup right there. On bass, you've got Robert Trujillo from Metallica. You've got Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses. And you've got Chris Chaney also, who's late of Jane's Addiction. He also played with Alanis Morissette's touring band. And then on drums, you've got Chad Smith and you got Taylor Hawkins, the late Taylor Hawkins. And Chad Smith figured in prominently with the previous album. So Chad Smith seems to be a regular collaborator. Chad Smith from Red Hot Chili Peppers, of course. There was one guitarist that was called. There was another guitarist that Ozzy reached out to. He reached out to Jimmy Page.
Oh, wow.
I believe it.
And they reached out to Jimmy Page and, hey, listen, you interested? Jimmy Page never returned the phone call.
Oh,
yeah.
Either he didn't get it or what, but that really would have made for another interesting.
Well, see, that would have been because you have all three guitar players from the Yardbirds on this album. The trio of
that would have done it. Right?
They can sit around and talk about Aleister Crowley all night.
Yeah. Ozzy and Jimmy Page certainly could. So he puts together this really a really strong supporting cast, and I think that's what also drew me to the album is when I was reading about the people he got to help out with this. Really kind of building a collaborative community of these different. Again, all these guys are stars in their own right. Really don't need to be doing this. Especially Taylor Hawkins of late, with Foo Fighters and everything he's done, much beloved. And then Chad Smith, he could just also sub as Will Ferrell in films if need be. He could always be the body double and stand-in. So, these guys didn't really need to do this, but it's an eclectic assemblage.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you
absolutely.
say?
Yeah.
Well, Taylor Hawkins would have played with anybody. And that's perfectly clear. Just seeing that tribute concert. Bits and pieces. I didn't see the whole thing, but I mean, I was amazed at how many people actually came out for this thing. I had no idea that he had so many friends or people that appreciated his work, and it's a tragic loss. But it's.
I was in tears for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those performances, especially like with his son playing My Hero and stuff.
Yeah,
man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And was this something that Dave Grohl put together? Andy, do you know?
I don't know.
I'm sure he must have.
Yeah,
he must. I think so. Yeah,
I think Dave Grohl. Just to take a little side rant, Dave Grohl is at the point where he's like the conduit between everybody now.
Yeah,
pretty much.
He knows everybody. Yeah. Everybody likes him. He could pretty much call in favors, and people will come. And you saw the you had Justin Hawkins from The Darkness singing Van Halen with Wolf, some amazing team ups, which was just a great thing. So I hope we get to see that concert in full. But so he's on this. So this was probably one of his last appearances. I don't know if Taylor Hawkins has other stuff that was in the can with other artists or what, Foo Fighters, but this will certainly be one of his last performances. And like I said, Chad Smith as well, who's solid. I always liked Chad Smith. I always liked the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I always liked his drumming style. It's just kind of always a little off kilter as well. He would keep you kind of guessing with what he would play. And I like drummers that are like that, but it's not because they can't play. It's because they can play so well that they can do those things. And Chad Smith, I always enjoyed as well. He's just one of the good ones. So
I'm going to throw a quote at your face before we get into this album by the one and only Paul Stanley. Okay. Somebody asked
Paul Stanley is in the Partridge Family.
Oh yeah.
He drove the bus in the Partridge Family, right?
He's in Ghost. He's a singer for Ghost. No,
he could be. Yeah. We wouldn't know.
No, Paul Stanley, of course, from Kiss, was asked why they don't do new music. Why haven't they released any new albums and stuff? They're constantly touring about their old stuff. And this was his quote. He says, "At this point, I came to the conclusion that I can never compete with the past, not because it's not as good, but it hasn't the connection to important times in your life. It doesn't have that patina of, gee, I remember when I heard this song when I was 18, or I heard this song when I was on my first date or whatever. You can't compete with the past."
Yeah.
And he also said that they released, 2 albums 10 years ago that had songs that are just as good as any other ones. Nobody wants to hear them. So
what do you think of that?
Take that.
What do you think of that, Andy?
He's 100% right. And I'll tell you why. There's something that this has really been bugging me about myself lately, is that music is 100% tied into the situations that I'm going through at the time. So I loved Guns N' Roses when they first came out, 87, 88, 89. I listened to Appetite for Destruction 100,000 times, whatever. So I know that song or that album front to back. They released a song about 5 years ago that was basically a deleted track off of that album that they found, and they released it as a single. And it's as good as any song on that album. Like, it could have been on the album right now and it would have been totally fine. I could not care less about that song. It came too late. It's not attached to this specific moment that I was really into it. So it's like there's this, you're fighting with people that have been around for a really long time, and it's when you get more into adulthood and you don't have enough time to sit around and listen to stuff. It's just, it doesn't have that. It takes a lot. It's a lot harder to get into your brain, you know.
Now that's a really good point. But what you're using though is an example of a song from that time. Now, and there are other artists, and Eric, I have spoken about this. Dennis DeYoung from Styx famously said, "Yeah, people don't want to hear the new stuff." Yeah. Billy Joel doesn't. I have nothing to say anymore. Like, why don't you write? I have nothing to say. And what you're saying is absolutely correct. Those albums or those points in music are connected to things.
Yeah.
But what about younger kids today? What about the 15-year-olds that are discovering Ozzy via his new music, though?
Yeah.
And they're, this could be the connection point for them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So are we the grumpy old men of this music now and saying, well, is Dennis DeYoung correct? Is Billy Joel correct? Is Paul Stanley correct that, or is he too close to it, right? And saying, well, it's almost like he's so close to it that he doesn't think the new stuff, he's not going to look back on it as fondly as when they were hungry and coming up and One for All and All for One.
Yeah.
Are they listening to the new stuff though? Or are they going, or are they, a lot of young kids today are really starting to attack the stuff that made these artists back in the day.
Yeah, but how do you get in from nowadays? You hear this and then you're going to go back, right? Patient Number 9's got well over 1 million downloads on Spotify. So people are listening to it, and I'm sure there's the ride or die fans. There are fans of any group that will never have a bad word to say, and then there are more objective fans of an artist who will say, yeah, this is really good, and this kind of didn't do so well, and this is a great comeback. So there's always going to be a segment that whatever any artist does, they could do a turn on a plate, and it's going to be the greatest thing. And then some other fans are a little bit more objective of, yeah, you know what, I like this, but and that doesn't mean they don't like the new stuff. So Andy, let's get your take as we get into this. What's your take on this? Where do you fall in? Are you the turn on a plate fan that will love anything, or are you the fan that's going to look at this objectively and be able to put it somewhere in between or where it belongs?
I love anything that Ozzy does because I love Ozzy. It doesn't mean I'm going to listen to it. I'm not going to, you know what I mean? Like, I'll listen to it and be like, okay, awesome effort. Great job. I don't want to keep listening, but I'm happy that you're still going, man. I love you. Keep going, whatever. It's just, it did make a dent, but what I was writing down earlier is I just wanted to I was thinking about like the hooks on this album. Like, is there anything on this album that's got that hook that you can't stop singing over and over and over again? Listen to just some of the tracks off of his first two records. There's like 8 or 9, 10 songs on each album, just on his first 2 records. Crazy Train, I Don't Know, Suicide Solution, Mr. Crawley, Over the Mountain, Flying High Again, Diary of a Madman. These are like 2 albums of classic songs, right after another. And then like he had some ones in the middle there that were kind of weird and stuff, but like even through the 90s with No More Tears, he had these songs that are just, they're just hooky as hell, and you can't get them out of your head. I mean, they still play Crazy Train at football games. Everybody does that. I think. But I threw this album on, and I unfortunately I was playing it through Spotify, and I think I had shuffle on, so it didn't play it in the order of the album. So what happened is it played 4 songs in a row that sounded exactly alike. It sounded like one long song. It always that like starts with a shimmering guitar and Ozzy's in some echo chamber going and it's just slow and there's no hooks. I'm not hearing anything. It's just really like a big chunk of. And that's when I texted Eric. I was like, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Because I of course didn't want to talk bad about him, but I've listened to the album probably 6 or 7 times all the way through since it came out on Friday. And this album is a grower, not a shower. It is. There are a couple of songs on here that 3 or 4 songs on here that I really like. Now that I gave it a chance, and this is how I got into it. I said I can't listen to this. I listen to music while I work. I can't listen to this album in a row. I will put on a song by itself like once every half an hour and listen to it by itself. And I appreciated it so much more that way, because when you're listening to it all the way through, all in one song, it feels like an hour-long song, and you just after a while you're just like, I can't listen to this right now, you know. It doesn't have a different, the songs aren't different enough to feel like an album with concepts that are, you know, it's like every single song on this album is you know, I'm crazy, I lost my mind, my head, my brain, I'm so psycho, I'm losing my mind, I'm in a psycho ward. Like every single song is about him.
And throw masturbation in there too.
Yeah, there's masturbation also. But I wrote down on the piece of paper, I was writing notes, and I wrote, is this going to end? Is this album going to end? You know?
Yeah.
But
it's a long album too. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I found interesting too when I got into it. I'm like, wow, there's just a lot to chew on and a lot to digest. Eric, what was your opinion coming from the other side of the platter, as it were?
Yeah,
as a non-fan.
As a non-fan, I mean, but I do know Blizzard of Oz. I do know Bark at the Moon. I mean, even like I said before, even if you're not like a diehard fan, it was still on the well within our radar. I mean, it was on the radio. It was like we talked about Led Zeppelin and certain bands that were just there, and you just took them for granted. They were just there, but because they were cool and everybody was into it. And, you know, this album to me feels, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what, first of all, the way you guys were like, both of you seemed to be really excited that it was coming. I kind of assumed that is this his last album? Is it, I'm not really sure what it's trying to say in that sense. And what the guest stars, to me, every song sounds like their stuff. Mike McCready sounds like a Pearl Jam song. You know, Clapton's channeling Cream. He's, you know, even the drums are a little bit more Ginger Baker, you know, type of thing. You know, the Jeff Beck is reminiscent of his 80s rock period, you know, not the jazz fusion like Blow by Blow or Wired. And then above all of that, you have this sort of 80s sheen, like these 80s sort of keyboard. I don't get that either. Is that something that you feel?
I don't think there's any keyboards on this album, though.
There's quite a few. Like for the Clapton song, it starts off with this like this weird sort of 80s type keyboard, and then it kind of comes into, and then there's this overlaying guitar, which is obviously not him, but you know,
he plays the guest licks.
He plays, you know, these little tasteful licks here and there, but it's like, but he's, you know, the wah-wah pedal and all that kind of thing. I'm just not sure what it's trying to do. Like what is it? And above all this, like Andy said, you got Ozzy talking about death and you know, and how, you know, his physical state and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, why does he have these people on this album? I don't know. I didn't read anything about it. I didn't watch any videos. Perhaps I should have, but I just wanted to kind of come in and just be like as objective as just, you know, straight up just listen and just kind of give my thoughts on that, you know. And it's a solid album. It's well produced. I think I did read a little bit of something that obviously there is some auto tuning happening with his voice. I'm speaking from the audio, you know, guy, you know, like there are certain things that I like to listen for. There are, I could definitely tell there are on certain songs, his voice is a little bit, you know, fixed. As it were, but I mean, but that's to be expected. He was what, 75, 76 at this point, you know,
with Parkinson's and on drugs. So,
but you know, if I were a huge Ozzy fan, like Andy is, you're going to take the time to revisit it. You're going to go back, and I probably will too. Maybe I'll, you know, after this. And because I like episodes like this where I get a different perspective from people, you know, like I love talking to Andy about his experiences, and Dean, you the same thing. We all have different tastes and stuff, so we all take away something. So it might inspire me to actually, you know, give this another go. But overall, I think I don't, you know, the album to me doesn't really do much for me, but I could be wrong about that.
Well, the reason I think the reason you're questioning the album is the reason why I like the album. Is why is Clapton on this album? I don't care. Like, why is Jeff Beck on this album? I don't care. And Mike McCready, I don't care. I like that he's bringing, Mike McCready is bringing a Pearl Jam sound to it. I like that this is almost like an experiment where, he could have peeled off another Ozzy album.
But
right? He could have peeled off another one.
Yeah, okay. So, where's Ozzy's identity on this album? What's he trying to say with these? I
don't know if he's trying to say anything. I think he's just trying to present some different musical ideas. Because the Jeff Beck stuff it's got that rapid fire Jeff Beck sound to it. So it's almost like when Frank Sinatra did his duets album, right? It was him with Bono and these different things. And you're like, well, what's the point of that? What's Frank Sinatra? Why is he doing that? Well, for something different. And I think that's what's happening here. Is Ozzy is just getting a different, and it's probably Andrew Watt, I think, is probably the main protagonist of this, and reaching out and saying, hey, let's try this. I'll tell you, as someone who's not an Ozzy listener, it hooked me. I'm like, wow, it intrigued me enough that I sent the video to Eric. I'm like, check this out. This is kind of interesting that he's moving outside of his realm where he could just keep, like he could do. He could just keep running these albums off, and the loyal fans, the ride or dies, they're going to buy it no matter what.
Yeah.
But now what's he doing is he got some rock fans to kind of say, well, let me check this out and see what's going on. And Clapton and Ozzy is a very odd pairing. His previous album was him and Post Malone, and him and Elton John guested on a couple songs. So he's not treading new territory, but they're kind of increasing it. And I think what Andy said holds some water as well, that, when you listen to it at first blush, it's kind of like, okay, it's got a similar production sound to it. There's not a lot of variance in tone. But as I was listening to the album more and more, I was picking out some of those songs. Like I was latching on to Immortal, and I latched on to Dead and Gone and Mr. Darkness, and some of those songs. Like not every one of these songs is a home run. So let's put that out there. It's 15 songs. They're not all slam dunks. But I think there's enough here to chew on, even if you just listen to the guest stuff, to get a different take on Ozzy, that he's willing to. I don't know if it's his swan song or what, but I have to commend the guy for, at this point in his career, kind of reaching out to his peers. And I just watched an interview with him, and he wasn't sure that these people would be interested. He's so humble. He's like, why would Eric Clapton want to work with me? So the guy still has that either naivete or ultimately humble of, why would anybody want to come here? Why would Jeff Beck want to come on this album? So I think it was Andrew Watt that really kind of put the feelers out there and say, hey, why don't you come in? Let's try some different things. And I applaud the guy for trying it. And to the auto tune and the thing, this guy, his vocals are doubled. That's not done technologically. He still doubles his own vocals. So got to give the guy credit for not only singing the songs, then he's got to sing them again to get that Ozzy doubled sound. They could very easily just double track that, move it over a little bit so it sounds a little out of sync.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But from that aspect, I really appreciate what he's done. And again, at his age, with the stuff he's got going on, I'm sure there's a lot of handling going on for Ozzy, with all the afflictions he has. But in light of all that, this album, I think, is a success because of that, or maybe in spite of that.
A couple of years ago, I read an interview with him where this is probably 10 years ago. He was talking about how, because he's the biggest Beatles fan, like he's obsessed with the Beatles. He still is. And, he said he still hasn't written his Sgt. Pepper yet. And like, he looks forward to the day when he writes his
What's he waiting for?
And I remember reading that and thinking, like, how can you not look at Diary of a Madman or Blizzard of Oz or, Ultimate Sin or any of these things and not think that you've nailed something yet, So he's always trying to move forward. But I took some notes after the 6th or 7th time I listened to the album of like stuff that stood out to me. And I think that the first time I heard it, I sent a link to you guys separately, but it felt like the stuff with Tony Iommi, it was like, we have to fill some slots of, okay, we've got 2 members of Black Sabbath in this song. We have to do the Black Sabbath thing. So like throw a harmonica on it, like do that drum fill, or, there's even, it's just, he even does the, oh yeah, or a couple of times in those songs, and it's like why are you doing that? Because you think that we're expecting it, or are you doing it like to be cheeky? I have no idea what the point of that is, but it felt like I I wish I need a bell for Metallica for your ELO, but it always comes down to like Rick Rubin. When Rick Rubin produced the Metallica album, they said they put him in a room and made them listen to their old stuff and say, remember who you were back then and write a new metal album. And it felt very much like they tried to do this with Ozzy on this, where it was like on the metal parts, it was like, try to write Sabbath stuff like back when you were, what were you thinking back then, whatever. And they just, it's been so long that they're like, Ozzy's like, I went, oh yeah, in one of the songs, I should do that. Or, it just
kind of copy and paste.
Yeah, it didn't feel real. But there's there's a couple of riffs in those songs with Tony Iommi that sound just like Metallica. And Metallica is influenced by Sabbath, like obsessively obsessed with Sabbath. And it's crazy how full circle it is, because Tony Iommi is now playing like Metallica, and it felt really weird. But there's a couple of really good songs on the album now that I'm really kind of getting into it, and some of the hooks are growing on me a little bit. There's a song, Mr. Darkness, also sounds like it could be right off of Diary of a Madman. It's got a really nice guitar hook and stuff. But the Eric Clapton song, it sounded like Ozzy had a song, and he was like, ran into Eric Clapton, and he's like, hey, you want to play on my album? And Eric Clapton's like, sure, whatever, send me something. And he sent him the song. Clapton and played over it one afternoon and sent the file over to him or something. It doesn't sound like a collaboration whatsoever. It sounds like,
well, is that the same for all, you think?
Well, I get what Andy's saying. It sounds, no, I don't think so, because it sounds the least connected.
Yeah.
The Jeff Beck stuff sounds like it kind of fits in. And maybe that's just because maybe it's jarring because Clapton is such a different player, right? Mike McCready is in that hard rock genre, in that space, and can kind of adapt. When you're getting Clapton, you're getting Clapton, so maybe it could have been a better song selection where they maybe, with one of the slower tracks where they kind of tried to match it a little bit better, or match the performer, not like, oh, this is your solo. I recorded a solo and you're going to use it on whatever song you want. Yeah. I don't think it was that, but it was definitely, you could definitely feel Clapton was kind of put in there because it's very jarring hearing Clapton on a metal song. So maybe that might take some getting used to too, is kind of listening to it and listening for some of the nuances at first glance. Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, okay, that definitely sounds like Clapton. But what's he doing in the rest of this song? Like how did he just?
No, I don't think it's a particularly good track. And Clapton is just not that kind of player, or he's far removed from the Cream days, and obviously, if you're going to pick something, you're going to have him on this. That's what Ozzy wants you to play. You got to plug in, and you got to be a little bit louder than what you're doing. Nowadays.
Less subtle,
but even that is just, it's a lot softer than it used to be. He's not, he's not cracking his amps in half with like the old days. So I no, but I don't know. I just think that all the songs feel like that to me. Like how do we know? If I knew that they actually came into the studio and sat down next to Ozzy and did this. Might be a different story, but I don't know.
I feel like,
or is it just a patchwork of them just phoning their parts in and just having these guys just say, well, we got these guys on the album, but did Ozzy actually interact with them? Did I don't know. But
I agree I agree with Dean. The Jeff Beck stuff definitely sounds like they worked something out. I mean, he's like integrated into the song and stuff. The Clapton song, One of These Days, I don't know if you saw the controversy about Eric Clapton not agreeing with the lyrics, or did you see that?
No.
No, there was an issue because the chorus says, the chorus says it's one of those days that I don't believe in Jesus, and apparently Clapton didn't like that very much, but I guess so. The lyrics were written after his collaboration or whatever, but it is very clearly a recovery song. It's a song about recovering from alcohol and addiction. And it makes perfect sense if he's going to these 12 steps things and he's fallen right back into his addiction. It's just one of those days he doesn't believe in Jesus.
Yeah, some of those days. Yeah.
And it's
Well, that's probably the reason why he has them on there then.
Yeah.
If it's a song about addiction, that's the reason right there. It's not about,
all about it.
And
Ozzy's, he's part of the Church of England. He's been going to the Church of England since the early 90s. So it's not like he's declaring Satan on that song. It's just like, it's a really clever.
I'm sure people will cherry pick it though.
It's a really clever lyric though. I mean, it's just like, I can totally see that if you're falling into addiction again, like just ignoring the 12 steps and, I don't believe in Jesus today, but yeah, the Tony Iommi stuff sounds like it's collaboration, but the Tony Iommi songs feel like 4 or 5 different songs plugged in. Like there's this, and then there's a metal riff, and then there's this thing here, and there's a different riff, and then there's, it just feels like Tony Iommi came to Ozzy and said, "I've got all these riffs. Let's put them all into one song," or something like that.
Yeah, and one of the things I bemoan, and I've done this on past episodes, is songwriting by committee. And that's what you have here. Like most of these songs are credited to 4 and 5 people. So there's definitely, kind of bringing in a lot of different ideas. I think what made me enjoy this album is on Spotify. When I listen to it, they have the lyrics. You can read the lyrics. And I think that made it much more interesting because you can't always understand. It's not like Ozzy's a mushmouth, but for me, reading the lyrics as the songs were as he was singing them, I think it was much more impactful. I enjoyed the album a lot more. Because a lot of it's about your mind or those kind of, I'm sure it's kind of Ozzy territory, I guess, for lack of a better term, as a generalization. But for me, I enjoyed reading the lyrics while it was going through, and it helped me kind of connect to the songs and to the material a little bit more. And that's why I was able to kind of pick out and be like, wow, like you said, some of the lyrics are kind of run of the mill metal stuff. That you probably hear about, being in a hole, being in hell, and why did God leave me here, that kind of stuff. But that's what you get. I mean, that's why you listen to Ozzy. I mean, that's what you get. That's why people love him, is because of that kind of material that he provides, so you kind of have to understand going in what you're getting. And I kind of did that. And then for me, like I said, the hook was these extra people. And then, okay, here comes the Clapton song. Let me really prick up my ears a little bit and hear what's going on with it, and kind of try and digest what was happening, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever it was. So, I don't know. What do you think, Eric? Let's talk about as we wind it down. Let's kind of give it we haven't done this in a while, but let's give it a grade.
Okay.
Give it a grade.
For me,
C for Clapton.
Yeah, that's fair. No, a C+. Okay. Like I said, I would like to revisit this record. I mean, Ozzy is part, he's part of the tapestry, as it were, of all of our youths. I mean, it's, and whether like I said before, whether you're a huge fan, but again, it's, I'm going to go back and listen. I mean, he's worth revisiting. I mean, I did listen to the album, it was like twice all the way through. I did start to listen to it a third time right before we went on. So, but yeah, I mean, so C+ for me.
C+. That's good. Yeah. That's solid.
Yeah.
That's solid. Yeah. Andy, the uber fan.
I think if
this is the one we're waiting for this grade. This is the grade. My grade doesn't make a difference. We're waiting for yours.
I wish that I had more time to listen to it. There's some clunkers on there. There's no doubt about it. I would say somewhere between a C+ and a B-, whatever that is. Depending on the song, there's some, like the very last track is just an F.
That's a throwaway.
I mean, there's a couple of songs on there that are just, I mean, I can't get mad at Ozzy about this stuff, because I mean, he wrote a song about Perry Mason. There's a song literally called Perry Mason that was on the radio, that Let's Call Perry Mason is the chorus. So it's not like he is like the, the genius lyrical, but
not the deepest,
but he, you can feel the age, and I appreciate everything that he did and stuff. It's just, it's not clicking. Like I said before, like with the Guns N' Roses thing, I made that analogy because even the stuff that was back then won't make a dent now. So it's hard to make a dent in those, in the stuff that you, Eric, we've talked about stuff, like with Eric Clapton and, Metallica and stuff like that. Like it's getting, it's not only even though you can even really love the album now, a new album, but it's just you don't get the chance to listen to it 7,000 times like you do when you're a kid.
Yeah.
So it just
True.
doesn't it's not there's no osmosis where you're constantly getting
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
And that was one of his album titles too.
Yeah,
that's true enough. Yeah,
as well. I'm gonna give it a B. The eternal optimist in me, because you got to appreciate the guy's staying power.
Yeah,
you got to take that into consideration. You got to take into consideration the extreme amount of pain he's been in, and the multiple surgeries on his back and neck. And for him to soldier on and still want to do this, he could very easily chalk it up and sail into the sunset and just kind of make a living on his royalties on his albums and everything he's done. But for the fact that he's energized, they literally, the album before this, Ordinary Man, came out in 2020. 4 days after it came out, they announced that they were working with Andrew Watt again. So he was excited.
Yeah.
Right. He was jazzed about the results because Ordinary Man had gotten really good reviews as well. And they're like, this does not sound like a guy on his last legs.
Yeah.
So I think there's some currency there for, and I got to respect what Ozzy is trying to do. By also switching up, flipping the script a little bit and say, yeah, did it work on all accounts? No. But I think there's a blueprint there to continue to try this and bring in, like I said, he got an episode out of us about it, that was intriguing enough that we said, let's check this out. This is a new release by a legacy artist, again, which we are finding is few and far between, right? Because like Andy said, they just don't want to do it because either they don't connect to it or they think there's no market. Ozzy, he very easily has an excuse to not do this anymore. He's got more excuses than anybody to continue to do this. So the fact that he pulled this together and he's got a collaborator in Andrew Watt who's excited to work with Ozzy and can kind of help bring these visions to a new group, and like Andy said, I totally get what you're saying, where we're connected, we connect to these other things, but I got to advocate that there's got to be a new set of younger fans that may have just heard this because it came up in their Spotify thing. And they're like, wow, this is, Patient Number 9, it's been in my head for a week. Yeah. Because it's got a really great hook. It's a hooky song.
It's the hookiest song. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't condemn it. I'm driving and I'm like, Patient Number 9. I'm like, geez, this got to stop. And it wouldn't. To me, that's a good song. For me, it kind of grabbed me there. So I give him a solid B. We can't give him an O because our grading doesn't go to that extent.
My wife and I had tickets to see him. We were probably 10 rows back from the stage right before COVID hit, and I was so excited. It was going to be Ozzy and Megadeth, and
wow.
Megadeth, like I don't know, 2 or 3 months before the show, Dave Mustaine gets throat cancer and has to cancel. So somebody else was going to play with Ozzy, and then COVID hit. And then right when COVID starts to slow down, he starts to think about like redoing the tour again, and our tickets would still be good, or to whatever. But then he gets the Parkinson's diagnosis, and it's like I want so bad for him to be able to tour again, because it's all he talks about. Like when he's going crazy, sitting at home all day, not being in front of all the people, his energy comes from that stuff. Just seeing this stuff over the years, like I pray that he gets to do it, even if he doesn't come to my town. I want him to be able to tour again, just because I know it would energize him and probably keep him around a lot longer. Because just sitting around, he's not gonna make it.
The guy's a warrior. I mean, you got to hand it to him for the stuff he's done to himself, and then the physical things that have happened. May or may not be associated with it. Not likely. Parkinson's not connected to drug abuse, but. You got to root for the guy, and that's what really what kind of pulled me to this album is like, wow, this it's like Ozzy still records, like, yeah, wow, okay, let's check it out. And I think everybody should. I think we can all agree everybody should give this a listen, even if you're not an Ozzy fan. I think it's just it's a solid release. It's not a record breaker. It's certainly not going to redefine his career. But for the people, like I said, for the guest artists that he was able to get to kind of give a little different, breathe a little life and give a little injection into what he's doing. I think at this point it's a solid idea instead of just retreading the same ground, grabbing some of the younger folk, Taylor Hawkins and these other guys. I got to respect the guy for what he's done. So
what's the intention?
A B minus, and a C.
What's the intention of somebody at this point in his career? Like, I seriously doubt he's putting out an album because he thinks it's going to revitalize his career. Yeah. He's putting out an album because this is what he wants to do. Yeah. And this is what he wanted to do, and it sounds like this, then God bless him, because that's exactly what he wanted. Yeah. So
like I said, there's so many artists that we're starving to hear from, and we don't. Yeah. So when you get these legacy artists that are going to put stuff out, and this is quality. Yeah, this is not a cash. I'm sure, like he could have gone through the motions, like I said, but. Yeah. I really hand it to Ozzy on this one, and I'm gonna continue to listen to it. Maybe not as deeply as I did now, but I can certainly grab this album now and kind of have those other songs, those really good tracks, rise to the top and kind of enjoy them as I listen to it. We highly recommend. Check this album out. It's on Spotify. It's going to be on Apple iTunes as well. Go check it out. Yeah, he sounds in great voice too, so you're not going to go wrong. This is not like Ozzy on his last leg. Vocally, he really sounds strong. So this is in all a really strong effort. And the album is Patient number 9, and that's that was the first single as well. So Andy, thanks a bunch, man.
Always a pleasure, sir.
Thanks for walking away from the tablet and the stylus and putting on the headphones and microphone.
Oh man, I love being on here. So anytime, it's always fun.
Halloween is coming.
Oh,
indeed.
You'll get your draft card in the mail very soon.
Excellent.
For a smattering of episodes.
Spooky season.
Again, check out Andy on Andrew Cremeen's art on Instagram. We're going to put a link in the show notes. All you got to do, even on Spotify, if you hit more where there's a little description, you hit that little link, it's going to take you on your phone too. So you don't have to be on a desktop computer to do it. So cool. While you're doing that, after you've seen Andy and followed him, check us out on Instagram and Facebook as well. We would appreciate that. Give us a like and a follow too. It would be nice. It's the right thing to do, and it makes us really feel good and warm inside. It's not just the alcohol. So
it helps though.
Or maybe, I'm not sure. But that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. Andrew Cremeen, thank you so much for joining us. Much appreciated as well. Well done, sir. And for Eric, this has been Dean. We will certainly see you on the flip side.